Professional curiosity in social work practice. How to apply professional curiosity to practice. Welcome to the fourth presentation about professional curiosity. This is the second presentation where we focus on how to apply professional curiosity to practice. In the previous presentation, we looked at two models. The idea of stepping into the zone of curiosity and how to be curious enough. Indicators were important. Firstly, how they draw our attention to things, but there can also be a framework of mental checks during your intervention. We looked at the areas of disguised compliance and domestic abuse. In this presentation, we will continue to look at professional curiosity in other areas of practice. We'll focus on working with fathers and how other agencies, such as education, help us understand the child's day-to-day life. We'll also look at how tools can be used to structure some of the questions we may be asking when we are digging deeper. Working with fathers is an area of practice that I have a lot of professional experience. It draws a lot of attention because it is underdeveloped. There is a developing acceptance that men have been forgotten and marginalised in child protection. The key focus tends to be on mothers, who are seen as the main caregivers. Men, stereotypically, seen as abusers. There is a lot of useful ideas in the NSPCC briefing called Unseen Men, Learning from Case Reviews. This is focused specifically on factors to do with men and the way they are part of the complex systems of families. The briefing reminds us that men can play a vital role in their children's development and well-being and have a major influence on the children they care for. The briefing is titled Unseen. The finding is that men are unseen due to a lack of professional engagement with men, insufficient curiosity about the men in families and their roles and influences, continuing over-focus on the quality of care children receive from their mothers, inadequate information sharing between services. Professionals avoiding asking mothers about the men in a child's life because they were worried that the questions were invasive. This led to professionals not being aware of an adult male's presence in a home and the true amount of time that he was spending with a child. Another example was when practitioners meet new men in a child's life. They don't always check what role that man was playing within the family and how much influence they had. You can understand how a practitioner may do this when there is a new relationship being established between the mother and a new partner. That role may seem transient or temporary, but of course, over time, the significance of that role within the family can change. There were practical examples of practitioners asking male caregivers about changes in a child's behaviour, and the answers given were taken very much at face value. There wasn't much checking into their explanations. When it came to face-to-face meetings, some male caregivers deliberately avoided meetings with professionals. They did this for several reasons. Some because they didn't think they'd been listened to, others because they expected to be seen as difficult. In other cases, the men were just suspicious of services and avoided all contact with services. If we look at this from the practitioner's perspective, men who were perceived as being threatening or intimidating were avoided. Professionals didn't feel comfortable or safe engaging with them. These factors impacted on what was understood about the whole family system around the child. It inevitably influenced decision-making and the management of cases. Some of the questions we need to ask about men in a child's life include making sure we know who any men are, who live with or spend time with the family, understanding their role, getting the spelling of their names accurate and any addresses associated with them, being clear about how involved the father or the male caregiver is in the child's life. If there are any new men attending appointment with the child, knowing who they are, recording and checking that information is correct, checking with other agencies if necessary. This emphasises the theme of these presentations, that we start with curiosity. It should never be unchecked. Nothing should be unseen. We talk a lot about understanding the experience of a child, yet so much of our attention is drawn to the problems that adults have. It is important to understand the experiences of the child and capture their stories, views and explanations, in particular the granularity of their day-to-day life. This can be as basic as getting them to tell the story of their day so far from waking up. What did they do and who was there? In relation to men in their life, who are they and how do they feel about them? Make sure you can compare what a child is telling you about men in their lives with what other people, in particular their mother, is telling you. Often the stories are different, sometimes quite contradictory. This is an important indicator. We pay attention to changes in a child's behaviour. We need to always be curious about these. When behaviour changes coincide with the arrival of a new male in their life, we need to pay careful attention. When we focus on understanding the experience of the child, we should think of other sources of information, not just the parents or the child directly. One of the key agencies involved in the lives of many children is the school they attend. Staff in school are usually well placed to notice how well a child or a young person is. They have contact with them nearly every day. Staff in schools can also observe changes in children, things like their appearance, behaviour, alertness or appetite. They can provide a degree of monitoring of the child's welfare. They can be the eyes for other practitioners working with the child or the young person. It is important that we use the potential of other agencies to tell us about important changes. School settings offer a lot of potential. Cultivating these relationships becomes an important part of effective safeguarding intervention. The last part of this presentation on how is to think of models or tools as way as facilitating curiosity. There are several assessment tools available to support assessment. Examples in children's services would be Home Conditions Tool, Graded Care Profile, Change Tools, and Strengths and Difficulties. If you imagine working with a family and you had concerns about neglect, during your visit you try to follow your curiosity. You are planning your questions, actively listening, and recording your evidence. How easy will it be to keep focused and not get lost? In contrast, you are using the grade care profile. This provides structure to your questions about their responsiveness and how they show the child love. It serves as a script to guide you and make sure you don't get lost. For example, in the area of responsiveness, remembering to assess mutual engagements fully with focus on the quality of interaction, as well as who initiates it, may be difficult without reference to the form. Even if you don't use the form directly with the family, if you had sufficient familiarity with the tools, you could use them as guides. Adaptations to tools such as home conditions check through several items for their presence in the home, scoring according to the impact on the child. Examples of indicators include kitchen floor is dirty, with examples of covered in bits, crumbs, rubbish, animal feces. This is scored according to the degree of impact this has on the child. Another indicator is there is a lack of food or food is inadequate, with examples of little or no food in the cupboards. These are indicators that promote curiosity. Motivation to change is an area where there is a lot of focus on how this is assessed. The change model includes 3 key tools. These are very simple models around whether someone is still at the pre-contemplation stage, whether they are externally or internally motivated, and at what stage of the cycle they are. If you are familiar with indicators of motivation, you'll recognise the statement of, "I'll do anything you tell me to do," as indicating external motivation for change. It is an immediate indicator for further curiosity. Tools such as those in Change Model create a basis for further exploration, and in Effective Child Protection, clarifying what changes are necessary to reduce significant harm and monitoring these using steps to change help us explore our curiosity on change. We will all have stories about our own practice experiences. What are your examples of times when you were professionally curious? Or you may remember a time where you recognise you should have been more curious than you were. Some of the examples that I remember from my own practice include asking a parent if I could see a child's bedroom, being in a dilemma, hearing a father talk to me about the quality of the contact he'd had with his child. Do I accept this as face value, or do I check out the accuracy of the description with the children or the mother? I remember talking to a 15-year-old young person who was in care, who said that her mother was making her feel uncomfortable when talking about sex and what she did with men for money. Our professional curiosity will make us alert to issues such as child exploitation, sexual abuse, and the balance of building trust with a child before asking more invasive questions. I remember struggling with this case. I was clearly in that zone of curiosity. I was trying to work out on that day, was I curious enough without being too curious and scaring the child away with my questions. In this case, the disclosure did eventually come a few weeks later. She was being taken with her mother, had been given alcohol and raped by 2 men. If we recap this second section about the how of professional curiosity, This presentation has focused on working with fathers and how they present as unseen within family systems. We've explored some of the reasons for this and some of the questions that may be useful as we demonstrate professional curiosity. We emphasised the importance of understanding the child's experience and also talking to other agencies who know children well. We identified the specific role of schools who see children every day. We discussed the use of tools as frameworks of indicators. In specific areas, they contain questions that help you structure your curiosity. Examples include tools for neglect and change. We invite you to reflect on your own experiences, when you had been curious and other times when you may have not been curious enough. Lastly, I share some of my own experiences in this area and the dilemmas I had about what was the right thing to do. In the next presentation, we'll continue to look at the barriers to professional curiosity and how to overcome these.